Once again, Christian greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world. Even more particularly to all Shepherd's Rod believers, and most especially to our beloved brothers and sisters in the United States of America. Special greetings to our brethren in Colorado, our brethren in Kansas, in Georgia, and Missouri, in Texas, in Chicago, Illinois, in California, in New York, Fiji Island, Mexico, Spain, in Africa, Zambia, Kenya, Pakistan, to the United Kingdom, to our brethren in Australia, and also to our brethren in Malaysia. And to the rest of the 144,000 living saints scattered abroad, greetings. May the good Lord bless you, my dear brothers and sisters. This is our special episode number 22 on the subject, the 66 books in the heavenly sanctuary, by which the focal point is the plan of redemption. How does the plan of redemption have been carried out in the heavenly sanctuary, as stated on 2SR 187, in sanctuary construction and service is revealed the plan of salvation. And of course, it points out to the judicial proceedings by which the focal point are the books, according to track number 3 on page 6. For the reason that those people who will be judged will not be there personally, so the only basis for such proceedings must be the books. Now, we need to focus our whole attention to Revelation 6, verse 6, by which, according to 2SR 222, there is something of great importance in such symbolization on Revelation 6, verse 6. For it is God the Father Himself is speaking. 2SR 222 says there must be something of great importance in these symbols, for the great Jehovah Himself is speaking. And accordingly, in the upper portion, in 2SR 222, it says, Again, we turn the reader's attention to the fact that the voice came from the throne. Then it says, see chapter 5, verse 11. Therefore, the price of the cereals is fixed by the great judge. We know that the great judge, that is God the Father. And in Revelation chapter 6, verse 6, there are only two kinds of cereals. That is, wheat and barley. And the shepherd's rod declared clearly, still in 2SR 222, saying, therefore, I would like to read the upper portion. The symbols have a very close connection with the parable given by Christ. That is in Matthew 20. The symbols have a very close connection with the parable given by Christ. Therefore, let the reader concentrate on the subject, for here is a truth worth our earnest attention. So, whatever the symbolization recorded on Revelation chapter 6 and verse 6, it has a close connection with the parable of Jesus Christ in Matthew chapter 20, from verse 1 to verse 8. Now, concerning the book of Revelation, the shepherd's rod made it so plain. The word hereafter in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1, pointing forward to 1844. It says here in 2SR, page 191, therefore, the word hereafter in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1, means from the time of the vision, pointing forward to 1844. The same with the book of Daniel. The time of the end, in Daniel 12, verse 4, also pointing directly to 1844. So let's read the Old Symbolic Code. Here in the Old Symbolic Code, 3 Symbolic Code, number 8 to 10, page 8, it says, this time must have begun when the book began to be opened. But if we must declare the beginning of that time in more specific terms, it, in a spatial sense, begun in the year 1844. 3 Symbolic Code, 8 to 10, page 8. So, the focal point of the vision of these two prophets, Daniel and John, is pointing to the year 1844. And we know that according to track number 15, on page 13, it says that both seers distinctly declared that the events which they saw was the judgment. The difference between the two scenes is that Daniel's was led to look into the sanctuary while preparations were being made for the judgment to convene, whereas John was led to look into the sanctuary after the judgment had been set up. In fact, John not only saw the judgment in progress, but he saw the whole proceeding from start to finish. Or in page 14, the statement used is the entire proceedings. Track 15, page 14. And we know that that judgment mentioned took place in the heavenly sanctuary. So, the vision of Daniel is limited. And the vision of Daniel is only pertaining to the judgment concerning the dead. Although he was given the vision concerning the judgment that pertains to the living, but only the preparation. According to the voice of inspiration, Daniel has no more vision when the judgment that pertains to the living was in progress. But John the Beloved, or John the Revelator, he had been able to see the whole proceedings from start to finish. The entire proceedings. Now, we need now to focus our attention to Revelation 6, verse 6. To repeat again, Revelation 6, verse 6 is the last verse that describes the third seal. Why is it that the parable in Matthew 20 is attached to the third seal? It's so because the first call in the parable in Matthew 20 are the first Exodus, Israel, who went out of Egypt. And that people, that generation, is under the third seal. I would like to read to you first the entire period of the third seal, 2SR 221. it says, the third from Abraham to Christ. So the entire period of the third seal is from the call of Abraham up to the first advent of Jesus Christ. And here in 2SR 226, it says the morning call. So the morning call. It says, the covenant was made with Abraham, which was only a promise to him and his seed. But Abraham obtained not the promise. His oath unto Isaac, that is to say, God solemnly declared that he will carry out his agreement. But Isaac, even as his father, obtained not the promise. He confirmed the same to Jacob, that is, he administered, settled, or established it. The covenant made with Abraham was realized by Jacob as a law. But to Israel, for an everlasting covenant, hence Israel received the promise. Therefore, it was Israel that went to labor in the vineyard after they departed from Egypt. So the first call is pointing to the first Exodus. Then it says, therefore, the householders early hour call for laborers in his vineyard, applies to the call of Israel out of Egypt. Why is it called early in the morning? At that time, Moses was writing the Bible, which is the light of the world. Therefore, very early, for the scriptures had just begun to be written. Thus, the period since the Bible came is called the day, according to the parable, which signifies that the written word of God is the light of the world. 2SR 226. Now, I would like to repeat again. According to our reading in 2SR 222, the symbolization recorded on Revelation 6 verse 6 has a close connection with the parable of Jesus Christ in Matthew 20 verses 1 to 8. What is the parable of Jesus Christ in Matthew 20 verses 1 to 8? It is concerning the 5 distinct calls, by which the first call is illustrated in the parable early in the morning, when the sun began to rise. And the shepherd's rod plainly told us that that is pointing to the time when the Bible began to be written. And brothers and sisters, according to our reading here in 2SR 226, that it points out to Israel who went out of Egypt. Therefore, the third seal, which commends to the call of Abraham, as stated in 2SR 221, is found on Revelation chapter 6, verse 5. the first verse that describe the third seal. But the first Exodus, Israel, who went out of Egypt, is connected to Revelation 6, verse 6. First of all, why? Because when Moses began to write the Bible, Moses was 66 years old. So, Revelation 6, verse 6 is also indicating the age of the first writer of the Bible, Moses. And I remember in 1SR, page 200, 1SR page 248, it says, the Bible is Moses. The Bible contains 5 letters. Why? Because that is the number of the Bible. The name Moses contains 5 letters because the Bible is Moses. And that number 5 is derived, brothers and sisters, on the parable in Matthew chapter 20. And the name itself, Matthew 1, 2, 3, 4, contain 7 letters. So, the name of this apostle, Matthew, contain 7 letters, indicating completeness. But the parable in Matthew 20 contain 8 verses, from verse 1 to verse 8, indicating that whatever the truth of the parable, it will be understood by the 8th church in the New Testament succession, the 11th hour. Now let us read the 11th hour church. Now let us read to SR page 9. It says, the message in this volume was prophetically timed by the parable of the householder. So that is very plain, brothers and sisters. Prophetically timed by the parable of the householder, who sent laborers into his vineyard. Matthew 20, verse 1 to 16. Proving to be the 11th hour call, the last, and at the right time. So it says, it was prophetically timed. And it says, prophetically timed by the parable of the householder. And what time is that? The 11th hour. And that is why here in 2SR 234, it says, but the object of the lesson is for the latter. But the object of the lesson is for the latter, who are hired at the 11th hour. For the truth of the parable has never been understood by any other company. So whatever the truth concerning the parable in Matthew chapter 20, it had never been understood by the previous calls. The first call second call, the third call, and the fourth call. Never been understood by any other company. And only the 144,000. The 11th hour call, brothers and sisters. And if you will notice, brothers and sisters, the 2SR contain only 300 pages. I observed 2SR because it says the message in this volume. What volume? 2SR. So the statement in 2SR, page 9, it says, the message in this volume was prophetically timed by the parable of the householder who sent laborers into his vineyard. And to repeat again, notice 2SR contain 300 pages. And reminds us to Gideon and his 300. Let us read, brothers and sisters. Why is it that it is closely connected to Gideon? Because the example, I would like to read first. And 1SR. Here in 1SR, page 118, barley, symbol of spirit. 1SR 118. The second portion of wood, that is Ezekiel chapter 4. So the ladder in Ezekiel chapter 4. So let's read the statement here given by the voice of inspiration. It says, barley, symbol of spirit. The second portion of food or truth which we were to get was represented by barley. John Knox, so we have John Knox, was the next man who made the second step by teaching the doctrine represented by the barley, which was the truth of the Holy Spirit. Right, brothers and sisters? So, I would like to read again. It says, the second portion of food or truth which we were to get was represented by barley. The word barley is spelled with 6 letters, right? But the word wheat is spelled with 5 letters. So, here we could be able to see the significance of the verse, Revelation 6 verse 5 and Revelation 6 verse 6. And John Knox contained 8 letters, right? John Knox. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is contained 8 letters. And also, the word Holy Spirit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the word holy, 4 letters. And then Spirit, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 plus 6 equals 10, indicating universality. Now, let us read again the statement here. In 1SR 118, the second portion of food or truth which we were to get was represented by barley. John Knox was the next man who made the second step by teaching the doctrine represented by the barley, which was the truth of the Holy Spirit. Barley is not so commonly or widely used as wheat. In fact, few people would use it, and at that, very seldom. Many people do not know what barley is, so with the doctrine of the Holy Spirit. While the doctrine of the Holy Spirit is believed by some Christians, it is not believed by others. Some do not understand what the truth of the Spirit is, even as some do not know what barley is. So the symbol representing the second doctrine is perfect, even as the first. Then it says, Gideon's experience with the Midianites' dream of the barley cake overturning the tent proves the same. Read Judges chapter 7, verse 13 and verse 14. So, in the symbolization of the barley, the experience of Gideon had been attached, recorded in Judges chapter 7, verse 13 and verse 14. And brothers and sisters, I would like to read first this reading and the statement given by the Voice of Inspiration in 2SR 253. I would like to read. It is certain that nothing could fit so perfectly by accident. But think of such marvelous foresight in devising a wonder of this kind, which could reveal by a living picture the future for thousands of years. Are not such evidences as this a token of love divine toward fallen beings? Gratitude swells from our hearts. Words fail us. We can only exclaim with the psalmist, Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. I have sworn, and I will perform it, that I will keep thy righteous judgments. Psalms 119, verses 105 and 106. And the shepherds declared clearly that, woe to him. Brothers and sisters, it says here in 1SR 233 and 234, woe to him who may think all these wonderful designs in the beauty of perfection are just a chance or an accident. Such a one is denying the master mechanic of all creation. He is paying homage to evolution, chance. 1SR 233 and 234. Now, to repeat again, brothers and sisters, it is not just an accident that 2SR contain 300 pages. Why? Why is it that 2SR contain 300 pages? No more. Brothers and sisters, only 300 pages, exactly 300 pages, because it is closely connected. The truth recorded in this volume. Let us read again the statement in 2SR on page 9. The message in this volume, what volume? 2SR, was prophetically timed by the parable of the householder who sent laborers into his vineyard. Matthew 20, verse 1 to 16. Proving to be the 11th hour call, the last and at the right time. So it says, proving to be the 11th hour call, the message in this volume, 2SR. Would you think it is just an accident, brethren, the 2SR contain 300 pages? pointing to Gideon and his 300. Now, I would like to read here in White House Recruiter. Let's read the statement. White House Recruiter on page 58. White House Recruiter on page 58. The same divine principle obtained when, with trumpets and with lighted candles, canceled within pitchers, Gideon and his 300, under divine guidance and protection, encircled the enemy encampment as silently as a tiger stalking its prey. Suddenly, a signal blast and an instant burst of blaring trumpets, smashing pitchers, flaming light, and shouting voices through the ranks of Midian into wild panic, causing them to wreak havoc and destruction upon themselves. Thus, with this heaven-born stratagem, Gideon delivered the imperial host of Israel. Now, let me read to you the old symbolic code. It says, old symbolic code. One symbolic code number 10, page 1. One symbolic code number 10, page 1. To build the fort, to cast the mount, to set the camp, and the battering rams will require a fearless band of Gideonites who will not bow down to their knees for a drink. So let's read again the statement. It says, to build the fort, to cast the mount, to set the camp, and the battering rams will require a fearless band of Gideonites who will not bow down to their knees for a drink. Judges chapter 7, verse 2 to 7. One symbolic code, number 10, on page 1. I would like to read this reading on patriarchs and prophets. Let's read patriarchs and prophets on page 554. Patriarchs and Prophets, 554, it says, the simple act of blowing a blast upon the trumpet by the army of Joshua around Jericho and by Gideon's little band about the host of Midian was made effectual through the power of God to overthrow the might of his enemies. The most complete system that men have ever devised, apart from the power and wisdom of God, will prove a failure, while the most unpromising methods will succeed when divinely appointed and entered upon with humility and faith. Trust in God and obedience to His will are as essential to the Christian in the spiritual warfare as to Gideon and Joshua in their battles with the Canaanites. It says, by the repeated manifestation of His power in behalf of Israel, God would lead them to have faith in Him with confidence to seek His help in every emergency. He is just as willing to work with the efforts of His people now and to accomplish great things through weak instrumentalities. All heaven awaits our demand upon its wisdom and strength. God is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think. Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Now let's go back again to our main subject. Brothers and sisters, Revelation chapter 6, verse 6. Now, since the subject is attached to the parable in Matthew 20, Revelation 6 verse 6, as well as Ezekiel chapter 4. So, these three must be harmonized perfectly. Not only these three, but the entire Bible. I would like to read the reading and to SR on page 225 and 226. To SR 225 and 226. It says, with the previous explanation of Revelation 6 verse 6, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. We shall endeavor to prove that the symbols point back to the parable of the householder, and Jesus allegorically looked forward to John's vision. If the explanation perfectly fits the parable and the vision, of course, the parable mentioned here is the parable in Matthew chapter 20. And the vision mentioned here is the vision of John in the book of Revelation. More particularly to Revelation 6, verse 6. So it says, if the explanation perfectly fits the parable in Matthew 20, and the vision of John in the book of Revelation, in harmony with God's book. Of course, there is no other God's book, the Bible, in harmony with the entire Bible. And law and a present truth lesson is derived therefrom. Of course, the statement present truth lesson must be applied to the present. The lesson in the past must be applied to the present. A present truth lesson is derived therefrom, then only must we accept it as truth. To us are 225, 226. Let us focus first to the book of Ezekiel. We know that the book of Ezekiel contained 48 chapters. And we know that the name Ezekiel So, let us count the number of his name. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The name Ezekiel contained 7 letters. Now, I would like to read track number 1. So let's read track number 1. Let's read again the statement in track number 1, page 30, page 29 and page 30. Track number 1, pages 29 and page 30. It says, the reader will note that, though the prophet was bidden to go speak to his people, yet instead of being told what to say, he was commanded, open thy mouth, and eat that I gave thee. And when I looked, says Ezekiel, behold, an hand was sent unto me, and lo, a roll of a book was therein. Moreover, he said unto me, Son of man, eat thou find this, eat this rule, and go speak unto the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he caused me to eat that rule. Ezekiel chapter 2, verse 8 and 9, and Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 1 and verse 2. As the words which Ezekiel was to speak to his people were found in the book which he ate, the book can be none other than the Bible. Therefore, that vision in Ezekiel chapter 2 and Ezekiel chapter 3 cannot be applied to ancient Ezekiel. Because at that time, the entire Bible was not yet in existence. It must be pointing to the last and final antitypical Ezekiel. The shepherd's rod plainly told us in 1TG number 22 on page 30, it says, aside from Ezekiel, God's mouthpiece, God delegates no other to be a watchman of the people. 1TG number 22, page 30. Aside from Ezekiel, God's mouthpiece, God delegates no other to be a watchman of the people. So the only watchman that had been delegated by God as his mouthpiece is antitypical Ezekiel. And that antitypical Ezekiel, God gave to him the book. And that book was eaten by Ezekiel. And what is that book? That is the Bible. And the Bible contained the complete formula of the plan of redemption. In 1TG number 10, page 18, it says, the Bible contains the complete plan of salvation for all humanity. How do I know this? I know it because its story begins with creation and ends with the earth made new. Between the first and the last pages of the Bible, then lies the complete formula for man's salvation and redemption. And if such, it says, lies the complete formula for man's salvation and redemption. 1TG number 10, page 18. Obviously, therefore, that antitypical Ezekiel unto him had given, bestowed by God, the complete understanding concerning the plan of redemption. And God commanded the prophet, go and speak to the 12 tribes of Israel. And accordingly, that 12 tribes of Israel, they are the saints that will no longer to taste death. One is our pocket edition on page 74. Ezekiel was commanded to engrave a city upon a tile and to name it Jerusalem. The material on which the city was to be engraved, being everlasting, not subject to decay, it denotes that the city in vision is one that will stand eternally, a people that shall never die. So the particular object in view, the 12 tribes by which God commanded Ezekiel to speak unto them, they are the 144,000 living saints. To the last generation of men, the saints that will no longer to taste death. Here in 1SR on page, let me read to you, one of the significance why the prophet was commanded to engrave it in a tile. Here in 1SR page 128, it says, if it is engraved on a tile, 1SR 128, if it is engraved on a tile, it cannot be erased. The thought is that the prophecy will surely come to pass. And after it once becomes history, one cannot erase the things portrayed. It is there to stay through all ages. So, we cannot erase the history. Brothers and sisters, it is there to stay throughout the ages, according to the voice of inspiration. Now let's go back to our main subject. Revelation 6 verse 6 and Matthew 20 verses 1 to 8. The parable of Jesus Christ in Matthew chapter 20 verse 1 to 8. What is the first call? Early in the morning, when the sun began to rise. And according to 2SR 226, the first call points out to the first Exodus, ancient Israel, who went out of Egypt, by which at that time, the Bible began to be written. Now, what books that had been written by Moses after they went out of Egypt? Now, I would like to read first Patriarchs and Prophets. 200. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 251. Let's read here. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 251. It says, as the years rolled on, and he wandered with his flocks in solitary places. That is pointing to Moses. So I'm reading Patriarchs and Prophets, 251. It says, as the years rolled on, and he wandered with his flocks in solitary places, pondering upon the oppressed condition of his people, he recounted the dealings of God with his fathers and the promises that were the heritage of the chosen nation, and his prayers for Israel, ascended by day and by night. Heavenly angels shed their light around him. Here, under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, he wrote the book of Genesis. So, the book of Genesis were written by Moses even before the ancient Israel went out of Egypt. while Moses was still alone in Midian. So, at that time, Moses began to write the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible, which contain 50 chapters. Remember, number 50 is very significant, signifying the year of Jubilee. Now, brothers and sisters, if the symbolical sun are the writings that had been written by Moses after they went out of Egypt, then it commenced in the book of Exodus, not Genesis. Because the book of Genesis were written by Moses. Brothers and sisters, in Midian, before Moses went to deliver Israel from Egyptian bondage, and that book, the book of Genesis, it was written by Moses at the age of 66. Brothers and sisters, at the age of 66. How do we know that the book of Genesis was written by Moses at the age of 66? I would like to commence first on the statement in 1SR. Here in 1SR, page 114 and 115, it says, the prophecy made to Abraham of 430 years ended at the time the children of Israel went out of Egypt, which is according to Bible chronology, King James Version, 1491 BC. When does Israel went out of Egypt? According to the Shepherd's Rod, basing the Bible King James Version, 1491 BC. I would like to read first 2SR 118. 2SR page 118. Let's read. It says here, the King James Version is as dependable as any good translation. So the King James Version is dependable. So the only version of the Bible recommended by the Voice of Inspiration is the King James Version. 3 Symbolic Code number 7, page 4. 3 Symbolic Code number 7, page 4. Moreover, the King James Version is the one to be depended upon. So the only version that is to be depended upon is the King James Version. 3 Symbolic Code number 7, page 4. Now, according to the Bible, basing the Bible, King James Version, ancient Israel, they went out of Egypt 1491 BC. So that is very plain. 1491 BC. Now, what is the age of Moses? when Moses delivered God's people from Egyptian bondage. So, first I would like to read, I think, 1 TG. Here in 1 TG number 49, page 10. 1 TG number 49, page 10. 80 years later, Moses' religion led the whole Hebrew nation from the brickyards of Pharaoh to the Red Sea. The sea parted for their sake, and as soon as they passed through, it closed in on their taskmasters. What a deliverance! What a victory! You see, brothers and sisters, what is the age of Moses when he delivered God's people from Egyptian bondage? Moses was 80 years old. Now, here's another statement in 1 SR. Let's read the statement. 1 SR, page 110. It says, 40 years later, Moses was called and sent back to Egypt and did set Israel free from the Egyptian bondage. So, at the age of 80, brothers and sisters, Moses delivered Israel. What year Moses delivered ancient Israel from Egyptian bondage? 1491 BC. According to 1 SR, 114 and 115. That is 1491 BC. Now, then it's easy to locate the birth of Moses. 1491 BC plus 80. So Moses was born in 1571 BC. So Moses was born on 1571 BC. So let us now subtract 1571 minus 66 equals 1505 BC. So in 1505 BC, Moses was 66 years old. Now, how to prove to you that that is the year by which Moses wrote the book of Genesis? 1505 BC, ended in 1504. The whole year of the age of Moses at the age of 66. Now, let us read 1 SR pocket edition. It says here in 1 SR pocket edition. 1 SR pocket edition on page 71. Finally, Moses' arrival in Egypt and his success in freeing the Hebrew host and restoring order and religious liberty in 2,513 years Anno Mundi. What does it mean by Anno Mundi or Anno Mundi? In page 70 it says, Abraham's decision to serve the Lord in 2083 Anno Mundi, meaning years from creation. Years from creation. So, let us now analyze closely. How many years from creation? From the time Moses delivered ancient Israel from Egyptian bondage. So this is the information given by the voice of inspiration. What year Moses delivered ancient Israel from Egyptian bondage? 1491 BC. According to 1 SR 114, 115. What is the age of Moses when he delivered ancient Israel in 1491 BC? Moses was 80 years old. According to 1 TG 4910 and also 1 SR 110. So since Moses is 80 years old, then 1491 plus 80, that would be 1, then 7, 1571 BC. Therefore, Moses was born in 1571 BC. So this is the year by which Moses was born. 1571 BC. Now, 1571 minus 66, that would be 1505. So, this year, 1505 to 1504, 1 year. The book of Genesis was written Moses at the age of 66. At that time, Moses was 66 years old, by which it is not just accident, because it is purposive design by God, because the Bible is Moses. 1 SR 248. The word Bible contained 5 letters. The name Moses contained 5 letters. And the age of Moses, which is pointing to the 66 books of the Bible, brothers and sisters, is also connected to the subject Revelation 6 verse 6. Now, how can we rest assured that this information is absolutely perfect? That Moses began to write the Bible, or the Genesis. Moses began to write the book of Genesis in 1505 BC to 1504 at the age of 66. Because in 1 SR Pocket Edition, page 71, there were 2,513 years, brothers and sisters. There were 2,513 years. There were 2,513 years from the time Moses delivered ancient Israel from Egyptian bondage. 1491 BC. So let us add 2,513 plus 1491. Then 4, then 0, 0, then 4. So 4004 BC. So in Bible chronology King James Version, creation began in the year 4004 BC. And what is the statement of Sister White? Brothers and sisters, to prove that this date is perfect, let us read the Great Controversy. The Great Controversy on page 5, introduction, right? So let us study closely, brothers and sisters. Here in the Great Controversy, so Let us read the statement. Introduction. During the first 2,500 years of human history, there were no written revelation. How many years? 2,500 years of human history. There was no written revelation. Those who had been taught of God communicated their knowledge to others, and it was handed down from father to son through successive generations. The preparation of the written word began in the time of Moses. Inspired revelations were then embodied in an inspired book. This work continued during the long period of 1,600 years from Moses to the historian of creation and the law, to John, the recorder of the most sublime truths of the gospel. The Great Controversy Introduction, brothers and sisters, on page 5. So, how many years that there was no written revelation? 2,500 years. Now, let us subtract 4,004 minus 2,500, then 4, then 0, then 5, then, so that is 1504 BC. So this year is perfect. In 1504 BC, the Genesis completely written, or the book of Genesis, the 50 chapters of the book of Genesis was finished. When Moses was 66 years old. Brothers and sisters, right? So, that is very plain, as stated by the voice of inspiration. Then how many years, brothers and sisters, according to the voice of inspiration, that the entire Bible had been written? It says 1,600 years. 1,600 years, according to the Great Controversy. And you remember, 1,600, 16th century, that is, brothers and sisters, the call of Moses. 1500 AD is the commencement of the 16th century. And that is the call of Martin Luther, which is considered as the commencement of the rise of the Word of God that had been trodden underfoot by the exceeding great horn. Now, brothers and sisters, let us go back first to the days of creation so that we could understand. I would like to understand the spiritual sun and the spiritual moon, or the figurative sun and the figurative moon, we need to study first the literal moon and the literal sun. Right? To understand this very important prophecy. Now let us read first Answerer. Here in Answerer number 3, it says, Answerer number 3, page 7. The 24-hour cycle begins at sunset, because at the moment the earth came into existence and began to rotate on its axis, there was no light upon the face of the deep, whereupon God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And the evening and the morning were the first day. The light which shone on the first day, and by which God divided the day from the night, set the earth revolving on its axis, was not, however, that of the sun. For the sun and the moon were not created until the fourth day, when he spoke them for to rule over the day and over the night, which he had beforehand established. So when does the sun and the moon were created? It says, until the fourth day, when he spoke them for to rule over the day and over the nights, which he had beforehand established. Then I would like to read the next paragraph. Thus it was that whereas the earth began punctuating eternal time with the first night of creation week, there was already night, even though there was not yet moon and there was not yet sun. There was night, there was evening. Brothers and sisters. And then it says, thus it was that whereas the earth began punctuating eternal time with the first night of creation week, from which the weekly seventh-day Sabbath is measured, the moon began punctuating time at the end of the third day. So when does the moon begin to punctuate? At the end of the third day. So what is the third day? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Brothers and sisters. So when does the end of Tuesday? That is sunset, right? The end part of the day is at sunset, or although it is not appropriate to call it sunset, the last minute of the 24 hours. One day consists only 24 hours. No less and no more, brothers and sisters. Only 24 hours. Exactly. One day. 24 hours. And the shepherd's rod plainly told here, I would like to read the statement here in track number, let me see. The statement given by B.T. Halter that the evening is the last part of the day. Answerer number 2 on page 64. It says, it is agreed that according to Genesis chapter 1 verse 5, the evening truly is the first part of the day. For example, Friday night is the first part of Saturday, and Saturday night the first part of Sunday. This Bible fact was recognized by God's people all along the way. But from early in Bible time to this very day, the term at even has been used to designate the last part of the day, the afternoon. Exodus 12 verse 6, Exodus 16:13, Mark 14 verse 12, 13, 15, and 17, and John 20 verse 19. Thus this terminology, though in common use, does not in any wise alter the fact that the night which to follow the at even period and persist the day is to be reckoned as the first part of the 24-hour cycle. For the evening and the morning were the sixth day, Genesis 1:31. It is in this light that the statement on page 17 of track number 10 is to be understood. So, I think we have that diagram. I forget. We have no projector. The diagram concerning the how God divided the nights. So I would like just to illustrate, brothers and sisters. So, for example, on creation week, Sunday, so the creation week, which is the first day of the week, commences on Saturday night, or at the end of the last minute of Saturday. I would like to show to you. Remember, in heaven, the rest day is every seventh day. Now, I would like to show to you the creation week. Creation week. Then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Now, of course, before God created, began the work of creation, there was a rest day, of course, in heaven. So the first day of the week is the end of the Sabbath. So, the commencement of the first 24 hours. Now, brothers and sisters, so, at sunset of Sunday, the commencement of Monday, then at sunset of Monday is the commencement of Tuesday. So, the end part of Tuesday is at, I only use the term sunset to understand, but we know that there was no sun as yet in the first 3 days. On the first 3 days, there was no sun and moon and stars. On the first 3 days. Of course, 36 hours. On the first 36 hours. But there was already evening and morning. Brothers and sisters. So, the term morning does not refer to the sun because there was no sun on the first 3 days. And the term evening cannot refer to the moon because there was no moon, according to the voice of inspiration. Now let's go back again to the reading in Answerer number 3, page 8. Thus it was that whereas the earth began punctuating eternal time with the first night of creation week. So the first night, that is Saturday night, by which that is the commencement of Sunday, according to Answerer number 2, page 64. With the first night of creation week, from which the weekly seventh-day Sabbath is measured, the moon began punctuating time at the end of the third day. So when does the third day ended? At sunset. What is the third day? Tuesday. The third day is Tuesday. Why is it that we need to study this one? Because it is closely connected, brethren, to the third seal. The 7 days in creation week has close connection to the subject, the 7 seals. And Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, only Tuesday that contain, I think only Tuesday, that contain 7 letters, indicating completeness. So, let me see if I was not mistaken. So, let us enumerate one by one. Sunday. How many letters? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Monday. How many letters? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Tuesday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 letters. Thursday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 letters. Friday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 letters. Saturday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 letters. So only Tuesday contain 7 letters. And we will prove to you, brothers and sisters, that it is closely connected to the 7th seal. And it is also closely connected to the 3rd seal. Because this is the 3rd day. 1st day, 2nd, and 3rd day. It's very important to study this one because the parable in Matthew 20 is derived from the figurative sun and figurative moon. The same with Revelation chapter 12, by which the moon, the woman is clothed with the sun, and the moon is under her feet. So that is the description in Revelation 12, verse 1. So let us begin again. And let us read again. Answerer number 3, page 8. Thus it was that whereas the earth began punctuating eternal time, with the first night of creation week, from which the weekly 7th-day Sabbath is measured, the moon began punctuating time at the end of the 3rd day. So when does the moon begin to punctuate? The commencement of the 4th day. What is the 4th day? Wednesday. In the middle of the week. Because Wednesday is the middle of the week, right? And the word Wednesday contains 9 letters, which is in the midst of the week. So, what is the connection of the number of that day? Wednesday. Now it says, the moon began punctuating time at the end of the 3rd day, meaning at the commencement of the 4th day, and at the beginning of the 4th night. So, that is the commencement of the 4th day, from which the month is measured. And the sun began to punctuate time at the end of the 4th night, Or in other words, at sunrise. So, the very first sunrise is on the midst of the week. By which it was already the 12th hour of the 24 hours of the fourth day. Because the first 12 hours is night time, and the other 12 hours is daylight, which is closely connected to the parable in Matthew chapter 20. So it says, "And the sun began to punctuate time at the end of the fourth night, and at the beginning of the fourth day, from which the year is measured." So, the beginning, brothers and sisters, the beginning of the daylight of the fourth day. Because the beginning of the fourth day is not the daylight, but the nighttime. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. So, in this study, we can easily discern that the book of Genesis is not a part of the sun. The book of Genesis is represented by the moon. Because in creation week, the very first that had been created by God is the moon before the sun. The moon was created and began to punctuate at the end of the third day and at the commencement of the fourth day. The very first hour of the fourth day, which is Wednesday. And 12 hours later, the sun was created. So, here it is only figuratively. I would like to say figuratively. So, I would like to show to you the illustration. So from 1505 BC, brothers and sisters, this is 1504 BC. The book of Genesis. The book of Genesis was written. So, it is represented by the figurative moon. Figurative moon. Or because without the book of Genesis, we will never know the history. How could we be able to know the history without the book of Genesis? Only the book of Genesis relates the history from creation. So, within this period of time, brothers and sisters, it is represented by the figurative moon. Created on I would like to use this term. So, comparing the creation week, Sunday, Monday, then Tuesday. So, this is the first 3 days. within this period of time, there was already light during evening and there was light during daylight. According to the Bible, as explained also by the shepherd's rod. But the light during evening and the light during daylight cannot be from the sun, cannot be from the moon. Because the moon was created at the end of Tuesday. The last 24 hours of Tuesday. So here, Tuesday, the beginning of Wednesday, this is the beginning of Wednesday. Then there are 12 hours gap of time. Here the moon was created. Moon was created. And then after 12 hours, the sun was created. This is the first 12 hours of Wednesday. Wednesday. So it is in the middle of the week that the light during evening is from the moon. Brothers and sisters. But it is called new moon. New moon. But of course, the new moon, there is no light. Brothers and sisters. Because the light of the moon is derived from the sun. And the sun was not yet created. The sun was created 12 hours after the moon was created. So, the sun was created. That is the very first sunrise in Eden. That was on Wednesday. The commencement of the other 12 hours, brothers and sisters. So this is the 12 hours. Then, this is the first sunset. So, all in all, 24 hours. So, in our study, 4004 BC to 1505 or to 1504 BC, the light of God's people at this time is the same with the light on the first 3 days. So this is the symbolical first 3 days. Symbolical first 3 days. So how they obtain light? So the moon here is represented by human being. They relate the message cometh from God or cometh from Jesus Christ as the Son of Righteousness. Jesus Christ, Son of Righteousness, the Son of Righteousness. Then relate to Adam. Then Adam relayed the message mouth to mouth, oral tradition. But in 1505 and 1504 BC, brothers and sisters, the figurative moon was created. And that is the book of Genesis. And there were, I would like to use figurative 12 hours. From 1505 BC to 1491 BC. As it says, from 1491 BC. 1491 BC. When Israel went out of Egypt, up to 100 AD. So this is symbolical 12 hours. And then to the time when the Bible completely written, so 12 hours. So in other words, brothers and sisters, this is the first symbolic 24 hours. Nighttime and daylight. But that is only the groundwork or the illustration, brothers and sisters, so that we could understand. So, let us go to White House Recruiter. Here in White House Recruiter, on page 15, the truth is now become clear that the parable divides the time of salvation into two equal parts of 12 symbolical hours each. The period before the Bible, the night, and the period during the Bible, the day. So it says, lending additional force to the fact that the parable does divides time. Jesus declares, are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk during the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. John 11, verse 9. Now, brothers and sisters, the statement says, two equal parts. 12 hours in the night time, 12 hours on the daylight. So what day by which the night and day are equal? Only vernal equinox, because that's what it means by the word vernal equinox. The night time and the daylight are absolutely equal. And the reason that we emphasize that the historical event is only the groundwork, not the particular object in view, because it is not equal. Brothers and sisters, the statement 2,500 years there was no written revelation. And the written revelation began in the time of Moses. How many years from the time the Bible began to be written up to this time? Already more than 3,000 years. 2,500 and 3,000 is not equal. Remember, brethren, the statement on 1SR 244 saying, it is wonderful to note the inspiration of the scriptures. Perfect they are when their appointed time is come. Only at such an occasion are the scriptures grammatically correct. But that statement, grammatically correct, for example, Would you think that is grammatically correct? Equal. If the applications are not equal, shows that that is not the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy, because when the perfect fulfillment of the prophecy came, the application must be perfect, grammatically correct. Because our God is infallible God. In 1 SR 232, it says, as God is infallible, all His works spell perfection, even to one jot or one tittle. 1 SR 232. And the shepherd's rod plainly told us that Christ's illustrations are perfect. In tract number 3, on page 65, it says, do not regard lightly the wisdom of God. His illustrations are perfect. And there are two illustrations that closely connected together. The woman and the parable in Matthew 20. Why? Because both of them are closely connected to the figurative sun and figurative moon. In the parable in Matthew 20, the illustration of the sun and the moon were used, indicating that the nighttime, the one that lighted during nighttime, is the moon, and during daylight is the sun. And concerning the woman in Revelation 12, also use the illustration of the sun and the moon. The woman is clothed with the sun, and the moon is under her feet. So, the statement in White House Recruiter, page 15, divided into two equal parts. In Revelation chapter 12, it was illustrated by the two wings of the woman, which is the wings of a flying eagle. Why is it that the wings of the woman is represented by a flying eagle? Because the perfect fulfillment must be in the judgment that pertains to the living. Here in 2SR page 196, it says, 2SR 196, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. He represents the period in the time of the harvest. You see? Represents in the period in the time of the harvest. The last period is symbolized by the flying eagle to denote the church that shall be translated. So what is the representation of the flying eagle? To denote the church that shall be translated, pointing to the last generation of men, to the men that will no longer to taste death. And that is also how the wings of the woman was illustrated. Given two wings, brothers and sisters, of a flying eagle. Now here it says, 2SR 141, it says, we again call your attention to the woman, the church of Revelation chapter 12. Reading 2SR 141. We again call your attention to the woman, church of Revelation chapter 12, where we are told she was given two wings of a great eagle. So the wings is great eagle. What is the representation of eagle? The church to be translated to heaven without seeing death. 2SR 196. That she might fly into the wilderness. So, through the two wings of eagle, you can easily discern, brothers and sisters. What does it mean? It says, so the wings of the woman also must denote two great periods of church history. So, there must be two great periods of church history. Remember, brethren, one of the, not one, but rather the principal reason why Jesus Christ used the 3-hour schedule, both in Matthew 20, the parable in Matthew 20, as well as in Revelation 6 verse 6, as well as the crucifixion 3-hour schedule, here in 2SR 237, it says, I would like to read, reason why 3 hours to a movement. The following fact further proves that the church history, in this instance, is represented by a 24-hour clock dial. If the call came to Israel early in the morning at the 12th hour, and the day closed at the following 12th hour called day, because the written word of God was in existence for light to the church, then the period that preceded the Bible is symbolically called night. Some may question the evidence for allowing 3 hours to each incident, from creation to the fall of Adam, and again to Enoch and Noah. If God worked on the 3-hour schedule with the crucifixion of Jesus, see chart on page 22, and the same rule was followed in the period called day, when then he certainly would not follow another rule in the period called night. The reason he has followed that particular rule is to present to his church the exact time of her history by periods. What exact time, brothers and sisters? After the periods represented by the 2 wings of great eagle given by God to the woman. Or in other words, the last church, the woman in Revelation chapter 12, must be in existence after the 2 great periods of time. Remember, track number 3, page 65. Christ's illustrations are perfect. So if the illustration is 2 wings, there is no such wings. Whatever kinds of fowl, which is not even, or which is not equal, or which is not fair. It is absolutely equal, it is absolutely fair. So that 2 great periods of time must be equal, absolutely equal. The same with the parable in Matthew 20, by which the night and the daytime are equal, which is called the vernal equinox. But such vernal equinox is not literal, but rather figurative. And this is the last reading that I would like to read. We'll continue on our next episode. Here in answerer number 3, on page 11, it says, and so it is that the Passover, the Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacles, the 3 most important feasts in the year, besides other feasts, are controlled by the solar year and by the lunar month, the weekly Sabbath by the day on which creation began, and the year itself by the vernal equinox, the immovable signpost. That signpost is immovable. Why? Because according to Revelation 6 verse 6, as explained by 2SR 222, it is fixed by the great judge, meaning it can no longer be moved. And what is the significance? In the book of Ezekiel, it says, there will be no more delay. It will no longer be prolonged. It is fixed. There is a divinely appointed time, represented by the 2 wings of a great eagle, represented by the vernal equinox, the equal time, nighttime, and daytime. So we will continue this subject, brothers and sisters. And I know that it is, there is little bit harder because we are going deeper and deeper on the subject, but it's easy to comprehend if we'll only open our eyes and understanding to the Spirit of Jesus Christ, because only the Spirit of Jesus Christ can open our understanding. So, thank you very much for listening and viewing this program. See you again on our next episode. We love you, brethren, and may the good Lord bless you, and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.